Do you ever get that feeling, where you have different bits of information and you just sense they could fit together if you could just see the pattern?
Oh, definitely.
Well, that's pretty much what we're trying to do today. We've got this really interesting collection of texts you've given us. Some from Acts, a really powerful bit from Revelation, key stuff from John's Gospel, some Psalms,
Mm-hmm.
and a reflection piece, too. They all touch on faith in different ways.
Right.
So our mission, if you like, is to see if we can find those deeper connections, figure out what they collectively tell us about living a life of faith.
Exactly. It's like looking at different sides of the same jewel, maybe.
Yeah.
Each part shines differently.
Yeah, I like that.
But together, they show you something much bigger, more profound. So we'll dig into these sources, pull out the key ideas about, well, discipleship, the huge role of love, understanding God's nature, and that hope for the future that keeps people going.
Okay, sounds good. Let's dive right into the book of Acts then, chapter 14, verses 21 to 27. What jumps out at me right away is just how active and intentional the early followers were.
Yeah.
They weren't just hearing things. They were out there sharing it, helping new people understand. And then this feels crucial. They actually went back to check on them, to strengthen those communities in places like Lystra, Iconium. It wasn't just a one-off event, was it?
Not at all. That passage really shows that becoming a follower, discipleship, right? Learning and living the teachings. It's not just saying yes once.
Yeah.
It's this ongoing thing,
Yeah.
growing, supporting each other in a community. They deliberately went back to encourage them, telling them to continue in the faith.
Even mentioning the hard stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even acknowledging up front that through many tribulations, we must enter the kingdom of God. That says a lot, doesn't it? About needing perseverance and just accepting that challenges are, well, part of it.
And it wasn't all about individual grit either. Verse 23 says, they appointed elders for them in every church with prayer and fasting. That shows a real effort to build, structure and leadership, doesn't it?
Hmm.
And doing it with prayer and fasting suggests they were really looking for guidance beyond just, picking someone they liked.
Yeah.
What does that tell us about how these communities were supposed to work?
It's fascinating, isn't it? The early church saw they needed both things, that spiritual foundation and practical organization. Choosing elders wasn't just filling a slot.
Right.
It was about trusting certain people with the care, the guidance of the community, and doing it prayerfully, seeking discernment. It wasn't casual at all. Shows how vital support and guidance within the community were for, well, long-term health.
Right.
And then, remember verse 27, when they finished that part of their work, they got everyone together and basically reported back, declared all that God had done with them. There's this real sense of shared journey, accountability.
Okay, so if we're trying to pull out a core idea here, it seems like the early model for building faith wasn't just about getting the message out. It was also really invested in making sure that faith actually took root.
Yeah, deeply invested.
Through intentional follow-up, community structures, leadership, and facing challenges together. Not just conversion, but sustained growth.
Exactly. It's a model that holds both outreach and that crucial nurturing within a supportive community together.
Okay, now let's shift gears completely. Let's step into Revelation, chapter 21, verses 1 through 5. This is painting a picture of a new heaven and a new earth. It feels so different from the practical steps in Acts. What's the point of this big perspective shift?
Well, it's moving from the immediate stuff, the reality of building communities, to the ultimate hope that fuels all that effort.
Oh, okay.
The text says the first heaven and the first earth had passed away and the sea was no more. Now, in the ancient world, the sea often represented, well, chaos, the unknown, things you couldn't control.
Right, danger.
Yeah. So its absence here kind of suggests a complete removal of that old broken order, all the uncertainty gone. What does that absence, that no more sea, say to you?
It speaks of, well, ultimate peace, I suppose.
Mhm.
Stability. A world where those chaotic bits are just gone. And then you get this amazing image, the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, adorned for her husband. It sounds so perfect, so intentionally made.
That bright imagery, it's about intimacy, isn't it? A perfect union, that restored relationship between God and humanity. Verse 3 really drives it home. Behold, the dwelling of God is with men. He will dwell with them.
And they shall be his people.
And God himself will be with them as their God. I mean, that's the promise of ultimate closeness,
Yeah.
belonging.
Yeah. But what really hits me is verse 4. God will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more.
Mm-hmm.
There shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away. Wow. That promise of a future with absolutely no suffering, it's just incredibly powerful. It speaks to such a deep human longing, doesn't it?
It really does. This picture of total restoration gives such a powerful long-term view. It suggests that all the struggles, the difficulties, even the ones Acts acknowledged, they aren't the end of the story.
Right.
And then you have the one on the throne making that absolute declaration, behold, I make all things new. Not just tweaked or improved,
Wow.
totally new, a complete transformation.
So the core insight here isn't just some vague hope for better days. It's this powerful expectation of a future where everything is renewed, God is right there, and all suffering is just
Okay.
gone.
Yeah.
That's a radical hope. It could really change how you see today's problems, couldn't it?
Precisely. That vision of ultimate renewal gives us a powerful lens for the present. It offers purpose, resilience, even when things are tough.
Okay, let's turn now to the Gospel of John, chapter 13, verses 31 through 35. Here, Jesus gives his followers what he actually calls a new commandment. What's the backdrop here? What's happening right before this?
This is a really pivotal moment. Jesus has just had the Last Supper with the disciples. Judas has literally just left the room to betray him. Right.
It's in that context, with his own suffering and departure imminent, that Jesus says, now is the Son of Man glorified, and in him God is glorified. It's almost like his sacrifice itself is being framed as the ultimate revelation of God's glory.
And right after that, he gives this new commandment, verse 34, that you love one another, even as I have loved you, that you also love one another. It sounds simple enough, but that standard, even as I have loved you, that really raises the bar, doesn't it? How is Jesus's love different from maybe what they understood love to be?
That's the key question, isn't it? Jesus' love wasn't just, affection or being nice. It was self-giving, sacrificial. He was literally about to die for them.
Wow.
So when he says, as I have loved you,
Mm-hmm.
he's pointing to that kind of love, a love that puts others first, shown through action, through sacrifice, even the ultimate sacrifice.
And the effect of this kind of love. He makes it crystal clear in verse 75. By this, all men will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. So this love, it's not just a private feeling or practice.
It's the badge, the identifier,
Yeah.
the thing that shows the world who they follow.
Exactly. It's presented as the clearest, most compelling evidence of their link to Jesus. More than just words, it's a living demonstration of their faith. Love, in this sense, becomes the main way the world recognizes his followers.
Okay, so the core insight here is love, but specifically love modeled on Jesus' own self-sacrifice, isn't just a nice idea or a good quality. It's a direct command.
That command, yes.
And it's the number one way the world will know who his followers are. It's like the essence of being his disciple.
Precisely. It's the defining mark, the hallmark.
Right. Okay, now let's look at the Psalms. We've got Psalm 145, verses 8 to 13, and also a bit from Psalm 103, verse 8. These give us such beautiful language about God's character.
Yeah.
What parts of these descriptions really stand out, especially thinking about what we've just discussed?
Well, what's really striking is how consistent they are about God's basic nature being, well, compassionate and merciful. Psalm 145 says, the Lord is gracious and merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. And Psalm 103 echoes that. The Lord is compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in love. These aren't just things God does sometimes. It's presented as who God is.
Yes.
And that directly informs the kind of love Jesus calls his followers to show, doesn't it?
It does. And that line in Psalm 145, verse 9, the Lord is good to all. He has compassion on all he has made. That feels so big,
Yeah.
so inclusive, not a limited thing.
It really emphasizes the universal reach of God's care and love. And then the Psalms also talk about God's glorious kingdom, his might, his everlasting dominion. So you have these incredibly tender qualities, grace, mercy, alongside ultimate power and authority. How do you see those two sides fitting together, his power and his compassion?
It suggests his power isn't just raw force, maybe. It's power wielded with grace and love. And verse 11 of Psalm 145 says, God's people shall speak of the glory of your kingdom and tell of your might. It seems like recognizing and talking about these aspects of God as part of their relationship with him.
Absolutely. How we understand God's character, his love, mercy, power, it shapes everything. How we relate to him, how we understand what he does in the world. The Psalms don't just ask us to believe it, they call us to, actively proclaim it.
So the key insight here would be that God's fundamental nature is defined by grace, mercy, compassion, steadfast love. Alongside his sovereign power and eternal rule, these aren't just abstract ideas, they're the foundation.
Right.
Knowing and sharing these truths is a core part of faith.
Exactly. Understanding God's character gives us the essential framework for our faith and tells us how we're called to live.
Okay, lastly, we have this reflection piece. And this really seems to bring it all down to earth into our daily lives.
Yeah.
It connects that command to love with the actual choices we face every day. Talks about choosing forgiveness, patience, and compassion, even when it's hard. This feels like where the rubber meets the road.
It really is the crucial link, isn't it?
Yeah.
Between the big ideas we've been exploring and just
Ah.
everyday living out of faith. The reflection emphasizes that love isn't passive. It's not just a feeling.
Yeah.
It takes intention, active choices,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it's difficult.
And it asks that really direct question, doesn't it? How will you show Christ-like love to someone today?
Yeah.
Especially when it's not easy. There's a direct challenge to each of us listening.
It forces us to move beyond just understanding the command to actually doing it, embodying that love and how we interact. It's about being a living witness,
Yeah.
letting our actions, things like forgiveness, patience, compassion, be real expressions of the love we've been talking about.
Okay, so the core insight from this reflection is that the big idea of love has to become real. It needs to be actively, intentionally lived out in daily life through conscious choices, forgiveness, patience, compassion, making us living examples of God's love at work.
Precisely. It's about translating belief into actual behavior,
Yeah.
tangible stuff.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, it really is amazing how these different texts, seemingly separate, actually weave together, isn't it?
Is.
We started with that practical, on-the-ground faith community in Acts, which is ultimately fueled by that incredible hope of a renewed future we saw in Revelation.
Right.
And the thread holding it all together, eliminated by John in the Psalms, is this absolute centrality of love, love that reflects God's own character.
Yeah, what's really illuminating is seeing how they all point to this unified picture of a faith-filled life, that early community in Acts. It was built on love and support, that future hope in Revelation, rooted in God's ultimate love and desire to be with his people. And the Psalms show us that love and compassion are basic to who God is, the very things Jesus said should mark his followers. It just keeps coming back to that call to love one another.
It's that kind of aha moment, isn't it? Where you suddenly see that love isn't just a nice feeling. It's the bedrock of faith. It's the glue for community. And it's a direct reflection of who God is and what he promises.
Exactly. It's the connecting thread running through everything we looked at.
Yeah.
So here's a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. Thinking about that powerful vision of a new creation, that world without suffering, where God dwells with us, how might that future hope genuinely inspire and shape the way you choose to love and act right now, today? How does the promise of a world with no more tears challenge you, maybe, to actively try and ease suffering, big or small, in the world around you?